Hello and welcome, everyone. It's nice to be connected with you. Thank you for being here with me today. This is a moment I've been looking forward to for a very long time. Today is the official launch of The Power of Caring, a book that has been, in many ways, more than 3 decades in the making, and about which I care deeply. Before we begin, I want to take a moment simply to thank the people who made this book possible. First and always to Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, whose life was the living embodiment of what this book tries to describe. And through him, to the entire tradition of wisdom that has held the deepest teachings on caring for millennia. To my publisher, Hay House, and to the entire team at Penguin Random House, thank you for believing in this project and for bringing it to the world with such care and craft. To all the Transcendental Meditations, and in particular the David Lynch Foundation, whose work over more than 70 years in Transcendental Meditation over the past 70 years has been the most powerful demonstration I know of what caring at scale actually looks like. To my personal family and the TM family, for your patience with the long hours of writing and for being the people from whom I have learned most of what I know about the caring and being present for one another and for the family of nations. And to you, the people watching now, the readers, the students, the seekers, the caregivers, the ones who have written to me over the years asking the questions that eventually became the chapters of this book. This book exists because you cared enough to ask. Here is what I would love this next 50 minutes to be. Not a lecture, not a book reading in the traditional sense, something closer to a conversation. I want to spend just a few minutes talking about what this book is really about, the central distinction at its heart, why I think it matters, and why it matters right now more than perhaps any other moment in modern life. And then I want to spend the majority of our time together going into the questions you will send in from around the world. Because your questions are the reason the book exists. And they are the truest place we can meet each other today. So let us begin. Let me start with the title, because it is where many people begin. The Power of Caring. When we hear the word power, most of us think first of control, political power, economic power, the power to command, to compel, to make things happen. That is one kind of power, and it is not what this book is about. The older, deeper meaning of the word power is closer to capacity, the power of an engine, the power of an idea to change a life, the power of a river to shape the land it flows through, not by forcing anything, but by being what it is, patiently over time. Caring in that older sense is one of the most genuine powers a human being can exercise. It changes what other kinds of power cannot change. A child who is cared for develops differently from one who is not. A patient who feels cared for heals differently. A community held together by mutual caring withstands what an isolated community cannot withstand. These are not soft effects, they are measurable, observable, and over the long run, decisive. So the title is not accidental, it is deliberate reclaiming of the word. Caring done consciously and sustained over time is one of the most powerful forces in human life. That is the first thing I want you to hear. Now, the central distinction that runs through the entire book, that I have spent decades watching people care imperfectly, including myself. I have watched doctors burn out, parents get exhausted by love, activists become bitter because the world did not change as fast as they cared about it to change. And I have also watched people withdraw from caring altogether into indifference or cynicism because caring had begun to hurt them too much. But I have also watched across many cultures and many decades the rarer human being, Maharishi as a perfect example, who cared sustainably, to give decade after decade without depleting. The difference between those two groups is not how much they cared. It is what they were caring from. The exhausted ones cared from anxiety, from urgency, from the constant pressure to fix everything. The sustainable ones cared from a settled inner ground that was being constantly replenished. That is part of the core of the book. And that is a part that is compressed into that one paragraph. And it hangs on a distinction I want to make very clearly, cleanly, because it is the sentence many people ask me about after they have read this book. Caring is not the same as carrying. Caring says, I love you, I see you, I am here, I will help where I can, and I know that your life is yours to live. Caring gives energy, it does not deplete. Carrying says, I have to fix this. I cannot rest until this outcome is secured. I have taken on the weight of your life inside my own body. Carrying feels like love, but it is really anxiety wearing the cloth of love. And it costs energy every day, and there is no bottom to it. The practical test I offer in the book is very simple. After any meaningful interaction with someone you love, a phone call with your parent, a difficult conversation with your child, a hard moment with your partner or your patient, ask yourself one question. Do I feel more spacious inside now or more tight? Spacious means you were caring. Tight means you were carrying. You cannot be both at the same time. So the question has a real answer. Now, why does this distinction matter now in this moment more than perhaps at any point I can remember? Because we are living in a paradoxical moment when amazing positive changes have taken place. We are more connected than any generation in human history, and yet lonelier. We have more information than any society has ever had. But we wonder about how much wisdom there is. We have more capacity to help each other than any culture in the past, and many people feel paralyzed about how to make a difference. The US Surgeon General has called loneliness a public health emergency. Youth mental health is in a crisis. Caregivers, the very people we depend on most, are burning out at unprecedented rates. Healthcare workers are leaving the professions they trained for. And underneath all of it is a common thread that this book tries to name plainly. People are caring imperfectly, and there are such people who are being harmed by their own caring. The answer historically has never been to care less. It has been to care differently, with an inner ground strong enough to hold what caring requires. That inner ground is what the power of caring is really about. Before we move to your questions, I would like to read you a short passage from the book. The very opening, in fact, that captures the heart of what we are talking about. This is the book, and I'll go to the introduction around you. The water ripples outward, soft rings expanding in perfect circles until they touch the far shore. You can't control exactly where each ring will end up, but you know this. Nothing in that lake remains completely still once the pebble hits. Caring works the same. Every word, every reaction, every act of restraint or generosity sends out rings. Some are visible immediately, others travel quietly through relationships, communities, even generations. The question is not whether you create ripples, you do. The question is what kind. This book does not ask you to care more, it asks you to care better. Because caring done consciously is not a burden, it is one of the most powerful forces in human life. That is the heart of it. Let's have a moment together before the questions. Before we go to your questions which are coming, I would like to invite us to do something together, if you are willing, just for 1 minute. No specific techniques, no performance, just a pause together. Wherever you are, in your kitchen, in your living room, on your desk, at your desk, settle into your chair for a moment. If it is comfortable for you to close your eyes, please do. If not, simply let your gaze soften and go slightly out of focus. Let your shoulders drop with your arms comfortably hanging. Notice that you are here. Notice that you are breathing. And notice, without needing to change anything, that underneath everything, you have been carrying today. The tabs, the worries, the news. And yet there is a quiet place inside you that has been there all along. Rest there with that quiet place for a moment. When you are ready, gently open your eyes and come back to me. Take a breath. Thank you. Now your questions. Let me begin with a question that goes right to the personal level. Thank you for asking it. And the question is, Dr. Nader, was there one specific experience or experiences in your life that caused you to care enough to devote yourself to helping the world and helping others? In fact, there was not one moment. It was more a gradual accumulation over decades of watching people, including my patients as a young physician. But if I had to name one strong experience, it was this. I remember as a young doctor sitting with a patient I could not save. And then for days afterward, my sleep was totally disrupted. What I was doing during those nearly sleepless nights was not grief. It was not even mourning. It was carrying. I had taken the outcome of that patient's life into my own body, and my body did not know what to do with it. It took me a long time to understand that what I was doing was not honoring the patient. Real grief honors. Carrying does not. Carrying is a kind of subtle attempt at control, a way of not letting go of something we were never in charge of in the first place. Once I understood that, and that distinction became clear, and with the help of transcendental meditation, my whole life as a physician changed. As I practiced TM and went deeply into the science of consciousness, I found that the ancient contemplative traditions had been describing the same phenomenon for thousands of years. In a different language, for example, equanimity, being established in the self, self-liberation, but pointing at exactly the same thing. Everything in this book grew from that soil, from watching myself and others care imperfectly, and from slowly learning how caring can be natural, effortless, sustainable, and actually invigorating. There is a way to care that does not consume the one who is caring. Here is, I see, a beautiful philosophical question. Is care the path to our natural being, or is our natural being the source and cause of care? My answer is that both are true. And understanding both is the whole picture. Care can be a path when we deliberately practice caring for someone, including caring for ourselves. We begin to touch a state of being that was there all along, but had been covered over. So yes, care is the path, but underneath the path is more fundamental truth. Our natural being, the deepest layer of what we are, is not neutral. It is aware and it is loving. When we touch it, care flows naturally, without effort, without performance. It is that we manufacture love from nothing. We uncover a caring that was always our nature. The spiritual traditions have a beautiful way of putting this. There is one ocean of consciousness called the Big Self or pure being, Atman in the Veda. And we are all expressions of that one consciousness. This reality is what we are, and we directly experience this when the noise is quiet enough for us to notice. This is what happens when we go beyond the surface waves, transcend and experience the oneness, the inner ground at the basis of all surface expressions. So the practical answer is use the path when you need it, practice caring, cultivate it as a discipline. That by itself is empowering and connecting. But know that what you are cultivating is not something foreign. It is the return to what has always been there. I see a very personal question now. One personal question, let's take it. And it says, how do you care for your family? I have experienced myself care imperfectly also, like everyone. But here is what I have learned also. The most important thing one can do for one's family is not any specific act of caring, although all specific acts are important and necessary, but it's not the most important. What is most important is the state you arrive in. If you come home stressed, distracted, still carrying the day inside your body, then no matter how attentive you try to be, your family feels it. They do not need you to be perfect. They need you to be present. And presence is not something you can perform on demand. Is it something you can create? It's not. It is what remains when you have taken care of your own inner life during the day. So the deepest way I care for my family is by protecting my daily practice of deep rest. 20 minutes twice a day, I practice transcendental meditation. Non-negotiable. Not because it is a spiritual discipline, though it can be seen as that, because it is the one thing that ensures that when I sit down at the table, I am actually the person I want to be for them. And beyond that, the specific things. Listening more than speaking. Celebrating their win without inflation. Being with their difficulties without trying to fix them necessarily. But those specific things flow naturally from the state. The state is where the real work happens. Many times I have been asked about my first experience meeting Maharishi. And it was his total presence with me. I felt that the world stopped and I was the only one in his awareness. This gave me an experience I never forget. It was the most profound sense of being cared for that I have ever experienced. Full, total presence. I can see a question that actually hits me when I read it, and I want to answer it with real care. We care for our daughter who is disabled. We use TM to reduce stress. Any advice for us to be better caregivers? First, please hear this. The very fact that you are asking that question after already caring for your daughter and already having the wisdom to practice TM, that already tells me you are doing something profound. What I would offer is long-term caregiving is one of the most sustained expressions of love a human being can undertake. It is also one of the most physically and emotionally demanding. And the caregiver's own well-being is not a secondary concern. It is the foundation on which the caring rests. 3 practical thoughts from the book and from decades of working with families in exactly your situation. First, protect your practice fiercely. 20 minutes, or if you do advanced techniques, maybe even more, 20 minutes twice a day together, if you can, where possible, is not selfishness. It is the very thing that makes the caring you give sustainable over years, not just months. Second, watch for the moment when caring becomes carrying. Even the most loving caregivers, perhaps especially the most loving, slip into carrying without knowing it. The check I offer in the book: after a difficult moment with your daughter, do you feel closer or more depleted? If depleted, gently notice. You may have been carrying her experience in a way that helps no one. Return to caring, which is presence without absorption. Third, do not do this alone. Community matters. Other caregivers who understand, a weekly conversation with someone who is not asking you to be strong. Even the smallest thread of support radically changes what you can sustain. You're already doing a beautiful and sacred thing. May the same caring that you give your daughter come back to you 100-fold. Here is a question I know so many people are silently carrying. Sometimes I look at what is happening in the world today, and it is just too much. And I can feel I just don't care anymore. Am I a bad person here? I feel so guilty. Please hear this. Certainly, you are not a bad person. You might be an overwhelmed person. And there is a very large difference between those two. The feeling you are describing is not the absence of caring, it is the saturation of caring. Your nervous system, faced with more suffering than any human being was designed to hold at one time, is doing the only thing it knows how to do to protect you. It is turning down the dial. That is not moral failure. That is biology. Here is what actually has happened. Human beings evolved to care about the people in our village, 30, 40, 50 people at most. Now, through screens and news feeds, we are asked to feel and hold the pain of 8 billion people, plus animals, plus the planet, plus historical injustices, plus futures we cannot see. No nervous system was built for that load. And when the load exceeds the system shuts down. That is not indifference. That is a wise protective response. The way out is not to feel more guilty. Guilt makes it worse. The way out is to shrink the field of your caring back to what a human being can actually hold, and to hold that field with more presence. Care for the person in front of you today. Care for the one email you can answer well. Care for your own body enough to rest. Then from that restored ground, choose one or two things in the wider world that you can engage with meaningfully and let go of the rest without guilt, knowing you cannot carry what was never yours to carry. You are not a bad person. You are a caring person whose caring got too big for one nervous system to hold. Return to a scale you can hold. From there, everything else becomes possible again. Here is a question that kind of pairs with the one that we just discussed. And it says, is there really something on a purely individual level that I can do that could actually help what is going on all around me? Or am I just kidding myself? You are not kidding yourself, and the answer is not the one you might expect. The single most powerful thing you can do to change the world is to become a settled, caring person yourself. I know that sounds small. It is not small. Here is why. Every person you interact with, your partner, your children, your colleagues, the cashier at the grocery store, leaves that interaction slightly different from how they entered it. If you arrive at each interaction as an anxious, depleted, reactive person, you are quietly adding stress to a world already drowning in stress. If you arrive as a settled, present, caring person, you are quietly adding coherence to a world that desperately needs it. Multiply this across a lifetime of interactions. Multiply it across the ripples those interactions create. What you become is not a private matter. It affects a field around you that reaches further than you will ever know. There is even a body of research from the TM programs showing that when even a small percentage of the population practices deep meditation, daily measurable improvements appear in the broader community. Reduced crime, reduced conflict, increased coherence. Whether one accepts or not this reality or this experience of how it works, one can read about consciousness and the field and how it works. But whether one or not everyone accepts every measurement, the underlying principle is undeniable. The individual is not separate from the collective. What you cultivate in yourself ripples outward. So no, you are not kidding yourself. The individual level is not the small level. The individual level is where everything begins. And more than 116 scientific research studies, in fact, have shown what we call the Maharishi effect, where small percentage of people practicing transcending create this transformation. I guess there is here a very timely question about how we live in this culture. How can we care for ourselves when we can't enjoy anything until we achieve what we want? So the question is saying how we care for ourselves, and when we have something to achieve and we have not achieved it yet. And you have named one of the most painful patterns, actually, I guess, in modern life, which is the endless deferral of enjoyment until the next milestone, which, when it arrives, only reveals the next milestone. The deep problem here is not the ambition. Ambition is healthy. The problem is the if-then structure. If I achieve X, then I can enjoy life. That structure always keeps enjoyment one step away and never here. The shift is not to give up ambition, it is to decouple enjoyment from achievement. Enjoyment lives in the present moment. Achievement lives in the future. If we tie one to the other, we surrender the only moment we actually have access to. The path has to also be enjoyable, not just the goal. The practical way in this is small. Once a day, maybe during a meal, on a walk, in a moment with someone you love, notice that in this moment, nothing needs to be different for you to feel alive. That is it. Do not chase a big enlightenment experience. Just find one small moment a day of being present without conditions. And separately, keep working toward what you want. Achievement matters, but it stops running your capacity for joy. Joy becomes something you have access to now. And achievement becomes something you pursue from a settled ground rather from an anxious one. Two tracks, both real, both important, both possible, but you have to stop trading one for the other. I can see a question here that asks about the work, that directly what we do, or whether we have done, how this works. I guess I'll ask the question as it is posed here. Are there specific examples, like from first responders or hospital workers, that your programs have allowed them to continue to care without losing their own well-being? And the answer is yes, many. Let me share just two. First responders, firefighters, and police officers face rates of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, suicide, addiction, and cardiovascular disease dramatically higher than the general population, precisely because they are carrying day after day what most of us are never asked to carry even once. Through the David Lynch Foundation, there has been an operation, it's called Operation Warrior Wellness Program. We've had thousands of first responders and veterans that have learned transcendental meditation at no cost. The results are documented in published research, showing significant reductions in PTSD symptoms, improvements in sleep, reductions in burnout. And this is the one that matters most to the people themselves: a restored capacity to keep doing the work they love without being destroyed by it. Healthcare workers, nurses, experience burnout at rates over 50%, and they have one of the highest suicide rates of any profession. Through the Foundation's Heal the Healers program, we have brought this practice to nurses, doctors, and hospital staff across the country. What they report is almost identical. The caring did not have to stop. What had to change was the ground the caring came from. There is a beautiful pattern of data in that data that has been analyzed. When the nervous system is given a way to reset daily, caring stops depleting the caregiver. The work becomes sustainable not through willpower, but through physiology. If someone watching today is a first responder, veteran, nurse, or healthcare worker, please go to davidlynchfoundation.org. The program is offered to you at no cost. It is one of the most important gifts you can give both yourself and the people you serve. I see a question here from someone who clearly knows Maharishi's teaching, and I want to honor that carefully. Question goes like this. Maharishi said that the highest care for the world is to enlighten the world. Dr. Nader, how will the knowledge from your book, The Power of Caring, empower an individual to contribute joyfully his personal best in consciously caring and enlightening the world? Thank you for that question. It goes to the deepest reason this book actually exists. Maharishi's teaching on this point was very clear. The most powerful contribution any individual can make to the world is not any single external act. It is the state of consciousness they establish in themselves. Because from that established state, everything they touch is affected. Enlightenment is not an escape from the world. It is a fuller entrance into it, with all the capacities of care, wisdom, and love that have been dormant while the mind was noisy. The enlightened person does not stop acting. They act better, more effectively, with less strain, with a wider vision, and with a caring that does not consume them. The power of caring is a bridge for that. It takes the ancient wisdom Maharishi restored and translates it into the practical language of everyday life. Caring becomes the daily arena in which the inner life meets the outer life. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to practice, not necessarily perfectly, but honestly. And over time, the person who practices this way becomes exactly what Maharishi described, someone whose very existence is a contribution to the awakening of everyone around them. So yes, the book is, in its own modest way, an offering in the direction Maharishi always pointed out. The world will not be transformed by more anxious caring. It will be transformed by more people, one at a time, learning to care from a settled inner ground. This is enlightenment expressed as daily life. And that, I believe, is the highest form of caring one can offer. And I can see a question now. Can you please? It's about hope. So I'll answer this, of course, as honestly as is due to that question. Can you please share with us what gives you hope and allows you to keep going with all the suffering in the world today? Isn't it all just too overwhelming? Yes, sometimes it is overwhelming. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But what gives me real hope, and this is not a decorative kind of hope, this is a hope I stake my life's work on, is that I have watched over decades what actually happens when even a small number of people learn to touch the deeper layer of themselves. I have watched veterans who could not sleep for years begin to sleep again. I have watched marriages come back from what looked like the end. I have watched teachers stop leaving the classroom. I have watched entire schools transform when meditation is introduced. I have watched entire countries begin to consider consciousness-based approaches to social problems that had seemed insoluble. None of this makes the news, but it is real, and it is happening everywhere, quietly, all the time. What gives me hope is that the deep pattern is favorable. Human beings, given the right conditions, return to what they are. And what they are at the base is aware and loving. Every stressed nervous system is capable of returning to peace. Every hardened heart is capable of softening. Every disconnected person is capable of remembering the connection was there all along. Underneath the surface, things are not as bad as they appear. We are not doomed. We are partially asleep, and an increasing number of people are waking up. That is what gives me hope. Not that the problems are small, they are not, but that the human capacity to meet them once we recover contact with our own depth is much greater than we have been led to believe. I'll take one more question and then we can have some conclusion. Our final question looks like a warm and creative one. It says, growing up, there was an organization that would send a care package to those in need. In addition to including your wonderful book, thank you, what else would you put in it today that would be good for anyone to receive? And the answer, of course, first, what a beautiful question. Let me imagine that care package with you. Let's imagine that care package. I would include the book. Yes, thank you for the kind words. I would also include a small note explaining how to receive instruction in a genuine practice of deep rest, 20 minutes twice a day, effortless, non-religious, backed by 50 years of research, the most powerful gift I know of. I would include a handwritten letter from the sender telling the recipient one specific thing they are appreciated for, not a generic thinking of you, a real particular honest thing. Being seen is one of the deepest human needs. I would include something to eat, maybe, and something to plant, both reminding us that we are part of a living world that continues to give even when we forget to notice. I would include maybe a small photograph, a beautiful landscape, a face, an image of quiet as a visual anchor. And I would include a note that reads simply, you do not have to earn the caring in this package. It is yours. Rest into it. That is what I would put in a care package today. May all of you receive care packages like that, and more importantly, may all of you have the joy of sending them. Thank you. Thank you for spending this hour with me, for your questions, for your presence, and for the care you have already brought to the world simply by showing up today. If there is one final thing I want to leave you with, it is this. The world does not lack caring people. It lacks caring that lasts. Everything in this book is written toward that one purpose, to help you care in a way that nourishes you rather than depletes you, so that your caring can continue for the whole of your life and touch every corner of it and every person in it in a way that both of you feel better for. If any part of what we discussed today lands with you, let it live as a small daily practice. Not a large idea, 20 minutes twice a day of true rest, one honest breath before you speak to the first person tomorrow, the caring or carrying check at the end of a difficult conversation, small daily fidelities. That is what shapes a life. If you have not picked up the book, The Power of Caring, published by Hay House through Penguin Random House, it is available now on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. If it lands with you, please leave a review after you have read it. Reviews are how books like this find the people they were written for. To continue the conversation, my podcast, Depth Over Noise, explores these themes in longer form with some of the most thoughtful teachers and practitioners of our time. You can find it wherever you listen to the podcasts. For the meditation practice I have referenced throughout, tm.org. tm.org will connect you with a certified teacher in your area, anywhere in the world. And for veterans, for first responders, and healthcare workers, davidlynchfoundation.org offers this practice to you at no cost. Please, if that describes you, take them up on it. You can also follow my ongoing work on my website, and I look forward to being with you in many conversations to come. Before we end, one last thought I want to leave with you. Something I have found more true with every passing year. We are one consciousness wearing many faces. When we live as though we know that, everything changes. Thank you for being with me today. Take good care of yourselves, and through that care, take good care of one another. Good night, and thank you.